The story begins in a quiet corner of medieval Bohemia. It was a land of deep forests and ancient castles, a place where faith and folklore were tightly woven together. In the 13th century, within the Benedictine monastery of Podlazic, life was meant to be simple. Monks followed a strict routine of prayer, work, and study. The stone walls of the monastery were thick. They were built to keep the world out and to hold piety in. Yet even here in this place of supposed peace, shadows could grow long. The world outside was filled with superstition. People whispered tales of forest spirits and dark forces. These stories seeped through the cracks in the monastery walls like the damp chill of a winter fog. The monks of Podlazice dedicated their lives to God. They copied sacred texts by hand, their quills scratching softly in the scriptorium. Each letter was a prayer, each finished page was a triumph of devotion over idleness. But the human heart is a complex thing. It is a place where doubt can take root, even in the most hallowed ground. The monastery was an island of order in a chaotic world. But the silence within its walls was not always peaceful. Sometimes it was heavy with unspoken thoughts and hidden struggles. The brothers lived side by side, yet each man wrestled with his own private demons, his own temptations, and his own fears of falling short in the eyes of the Almighty. This was a time when the boundary between the natural and the supernatural was thin. People believed that angels and demons walked among them, unseen. They saw God's hand in a good harvest and the devil's work in a sudden storm. For the monks at Podlazic, this belief was even stronger. Their world was one of divine signs and demonic temptations. Every challenge was a test of faith. Every strange occurrence was a potential message from the other side. The air itself seemed thick with possibilities, both glorious and terrifying. The monastery, with its cold stone floors and flickering candlelight, was the perfect stage for a drama of epic proportions to unfold. It was in this very setting that our story truly begins. It is not a tale of simple faith, but one of a faith pushed to its absolute limit. It is a story born from the quiet desperation that can fester in a place of enforced silence. The monastery of Podlazice, now lost to time, was once the crucible for a legend that would echo through centuries. It was here that a single soul, pushed to the edge of despair, would make a choice that would result in the creation of one of the most mysterious and unsettling objects the world has ever known. The whispering walls of the monastery were about to witness the birth of a legend. Among the devout men of Podlazic was a monk known to history as Herman the Recluse. We know little about him for certain, but the legend speaks volumes. He was not a saint. He was a man, and like all men, he was capable of sin. The exact nature of his transgression is lost to the mists of time. Some tales claim he broke a sacred vow of his monastic order, a serious crime in that rigid world. Others whisper of a darker sin, something so shameful that it could not be spoken aloud. Whatever the deed, it was discovered. Herman was brought before his abbot, his head bowed in shame, his future hanging precariously in the balance. The judgment was swift and severe. The punishment for such a grave sin was horrifying. Herman was to be immured. This meant he would be sealed alive within a cell, bricked up and left to perish slowly from starvation and thirst. It was a terrible fate, a living entombment designed to serve as a stark warning to the other monks. As the abbot pronounced the sentence, terror must have gripped Herman's heart. He saw his life ending not in quiet prayer, but in a dark, cramped space, his final moments filled with unimaginable suffering. Desperation is a powerful force. It can make a person promise the impossible. It can drive a soul to make a vow that defies all reason and logic. Faced with this grim sentence, Herman made a desperate plea. He begged for his life. He offered an alternative that was, on its face, utterly absurd. He vowed that in a single night he would create a book, but this would be no ordinary book. It would be the largest manuscript the world had ever seen. It would contain all human knowledge, from the Holy Bible to histories, medical texts, and magical formulas. It would be a glorious work that would bring eternal fame and honor to the monastery. He promised to complete this monumental task before the sun rose the next morning. If he succeeded, his life would be spared. The abbot and the other monks must have listened in astonishment. The proposal was madness. Creating such a book would take a single scribe decades, not a few short hours of darkness. It was a feat beyond any mortal man. Perhaps they saw it as a different kind of penance. They agreed to his terms, likely believing it was impossible. They might have thought that his failure would be a testament to his foolish pride, a final lesson before his inevitable doom. And so, the bargain was struck. Hermann was led not to a tomb, but to a bare cell in the scriptorium. He was given a vast supply of vellum, ink, and a single flickering candle. The door was closed, and he was left alone with his impossible task. The heavy wooden door of the scriptorium cell boomed shut, plunging Hermann into near total darkness. Only the small, sputtering flame of a single candle pushed back against the oppressive gloom. The sheer scale of his promise now crashed down upon him with suffocating weight. Piles of prepared animal skins, smooth and pale like ghosts in the candlelight, lay waiting. He had to cover them all with intricate text and illustrations before dawn. He picked up his quill, his hand trembling. The silence of the monastery pressed in on him. He could hear the frantic beating of his own heart. He began to write, his pen scratching against the vellum, a tiny sound in the vast, silent night. Hours crawled by. Midnight approached. Hermann worked with a feverish intensity, but he had barely made a dent in the colossal pile of skins. His muscles ached, his eyes burned from the strain of focusing in the dim light, and his spirit began to sink. He looked at the mountain of blank pages still before him and knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that he would fail. The first rays of dawn would seal his fate. He would be dragged from the cell and walled up, his impossible book left as a monument to his failure. Despair, cold and absolute, washed over him. He was a man of God, but in that moment, his faith offered no comfort. It was then, at the very peak of his desperation, that the legend says he made his final fateful choice. He had prayed to God for a miracle, but his prayers had gone unanswered. His cell remained silent, his task remained impossible. So, in an act of ultimate blasphemy, he turned his prayers in the other direction. He called out not to heaven, but to the abyss. He summoned the fallen angel Lucifer, the prince of darkness. He offered a pact, a simple and terrifying trade. He would give his mortal soul to the devil. In exchange, the devil would finish the book for him by morning, saving his life from the grim fate that awaited him. The legend tells us that the devil answered his call. The cell, once merely cold, became unnaturally frigid. A presence filled the small space, a being of immense power and ancient evil. The bargain was struck in the heart of that sacred monastery. Hermann the recluse, a man sworn to God, surrendered his soul to save his body. The devil, in return, agreed to complete the codex. But he asked for one small thing in addition to Hermann's soul. He wanted to leave his own mark on the work. He demanded that his own portrait be included within its pages, a permanent signature on his infernal handiwork, a testament to the pact made in the darkest hour of the night. When the monks unsealed the door the next morning, they were met with a sight that defied belief. The impossible had been achieved. Lying in the center of the cell was a book of truly gigantic proportions. It was nearly 3 feet tall and required at least 2 men to lift it. Its wooden cover was bound in leather and adorned with metal fittings. Inside were over 300 leaves of vellum, made from the skins of more than 160 donkeys. Every page was filled with perfectly uniform script, a feat of calligraphy that seemed beyond human capability. The book contained the entire Latin Vulgate Bible, historical texts, medical knowledge, and even spells for exorcising evil spirits. It was, just as Hermann had promised, a library in a single volume. The book became known as the Codex Gigas, the giant book. Its sheer physical presence was awe-inspiring. It was a testament to an almost superhuman effort, a monument of ink and animal hide. The monks, stunned into silence, could only stare. How could one man have accomplished this in a single night? The question hung heavy in the air. They accepted the book, and Hermann's life was spared, as promised. But a shadow of suspicion and fear now clung to both the monk and his creation. The Codex Gigas was a source of pride for the monastery, but it was also a source of unease. Its origin story was too strange, too miraculous to be entirely holy. The most disturbing feature of the book, however, was not its size, but a single full-page illustration. On folio 290, staring out from the vellum, was the devil himself. It is a bizarre and chilling portrait. The figure is depicted half-naked, with green skin, large claws, and a menacing expression. He is crouched in an empty, desolate landscape, a powerful and solitary figure of pure evil. Facing this terrifying image, on the opposite page, is an illustration of the heavenly city. The stark contrast between the two pages is jarring. It is as if the book contains both salvation and damnation, bound together between its covers. This portrait was the devil's signature, a constant reminder of the dark pact that legend said had brought the book into being. Rumors also began to circulate about another hidden detail. Some whispered that Herman, as part of his pact, had been compelled to paint a self-portrait somewhere within the book's pages. Not a proud artist's signature, but a portrait of a damned soul, a man who had traded eternity for a few more years of life. No such portrait has ever been officially identified, but the story persists. It adds another layer of mystery to the Codex. Was Herman forced to look upon his own damned face every time he opened the book he had sold his soul to create? The thought is a chilling one, adding a personal tragedy to the book's already dark and supernatural legend. For centuries, the Codex Gigas remained at the Podlazice monastery, its home and, well, its prison. The monks who guarded it treated it with a mixture of reverence and fear. It was a treasure that brought fame to their small community, yet it was also a constant, unsettling reminder of its dark origins. Pilgrims and scholars would travel to see the legendary Devil's Bible, marveling at its immense size and staring with a shiver at the portrait of Lucifer. The book was a silent witness to the changing seasons, the passing of abbots, and the quiet rhythm of monastic life. It seemed destined to stay there forever, a bizarre and holy relic locked away from the wider world. But the fortunes of men and monasteries are never certain. The monastery at Podlazice eventually fell on hard times. To settle its debts, the monks were forced to sell their most prized possession. The Codex Gigas was sold to the Cistercian monks at the nearby Sedlec Abbey. From there, its journey continued. Its fame had spread far beyond the borders of Bohemia. It caught the attention of the Holy Roman Emperor Rudolf II, who ruled from his court in Prague. Rudolf was a man obsessed with the occult, with art, and with collecting strange and wonderful objects. He became fixated on possessing the Codex Gigas, believing it held secret knowledge and immense power. In 1594, Emperor Rudolf II borrowed the Codex from the monastery, adding it to his legendary cabinet of curiosities in Prague Castle. He had no intention of ever returning it. The book now sat among magical artifacts, strange scientific instruments, and priceless works of art. It had moved from the quiet piety of a monastery to the decadent, intellectual heart of a powerful empire. Rudolf and his court scholars likely spent countless hours poring over its pages, searching for hidden meanings, alchemical secrets, or perhaps even a way to command the power that had supposedly created it. The Devil's Bible had become a trophy for a king, a symbol of his power over all things, both natural and supernatural. The book's journey took its most dramatic turn during the 30 Years' War. In 1648, as the war drew to a close, the Swedish army besieged and conquered Prague. As was the custom, they looted the city's treasures. The soldiers stormed Prague Castle and plundered Rudolf II's magnificent collection. Among the priceless art and scientific wonders, they seized the Codex Gigas. The giant book was hauled away as spoils of war and taken to Sweden. It was presented to Queen Christina, another monarch with a deep interest in knowledge and the unusual. The book had crossed Europe, a silent passenger in the midst of one of history's most brutal conflicts, its fate tied to the rise and fall of empires. As the Codex Gigas traveled through history, a sinister reputation began to grow around it, like ivy climbing an old stone wall. Whispers of a curse followed the book wherever it went. People claimed that misfortune befell whoever possessed it. The Podlazice monastery, its original home, fell into ruin and was eventually destroyed. The court of Emperor Rudolf II, once a vibrant center of culture, descended into chaos as the emperor's obsession and paranoia grew. Some courtiers whispered that his madness was fueled by his proximity to the unholy book. The stories suggested that the devil's influence lingered on its pages, a subtle poison that infected the lives of its owners. The journey of the Codex to Sweden was not without its own drama. Legend has it that as the Swedish soldiers were carrying it from the castle, the massive book was so heavy that it was dropped from a high window. It supposedly landed on a person below, killing them instantly. While likely just a story, it added to the growing mythos of the book as an object of disaster and death. Once in Sweden, it was housed in the Royal Library in Stockholm, but even there, it could not escape its reputation. In 1697, a devastating fire swept through the castle. The Royal Library was engulfed in flames. To save the precious manuscript, it was once again thrown from a window, further damaging its binding and possibly losing some of its pages in the chaos. This leads to one of the most enduring mysteries of the Codex Gigas, the missing pages. The original manuscript is believed to have contained 320 vellum leaves. Today, it has only 310. 12 pages are gone. What did they contain? The theories are as wild as the book's own legend. Some believe these pages held the most dangerous secrets, perhaps the spells Hermann used to summon the devil, or the details of his infernal pact. Others speculate they contained the supposed self-portrait of the damned monk. The official explanation is that they were likely removed at some point in its long history, or perhaps lost during the fire of 1697. But for believers in the curse, the missing pages represent a deliberate attempt to hide a terrible truth. The curse, the disasters, the missing pages, all of these elements have combined to create an aura of profound unease around the Codex Gigas. Is it merely a series of coincidences, the inevitable wear and tear on an ancient object that has passed through many hands and survived wars and fires? Or is there something more to it? Is there a malevolent energy bound within its leather cover, an echo of the dark bargain that created it? The book sits now in the National Library of Sweden, a silent, imposing object under glass. It is studied by scholars and viewed by the curious, but the stories of its cursed past continue to cling to it, a warning that some knowledge comes at a terrible price. In the present day, the year 2025, the Codex Gigas is no longer the property of emperors or monks, but of the public, housed securely in Stockholm. It is an object of intense academic study. Scholars analyze its script, its chemical composition, and its historical context. One such scholar is Dr. Anya Sharma, a historian specializing in medieval manuscripts and the intersection of faith and folklore. Anya has dedicated her career to the Codex. She sees it not as a cursed object, but as a priceless historical artifact, a window into the medieval mind. She has written papers debunking the myths, explaining its creation in purely human terms, the work of a single, incredibly dedicated scribe over a period of 20 to 30 years. Anya believes the legend of the Devil's Pact was created later, a story told to explain something that seemed inexplicable. She argues that Hermann the Recluse was not a sinner but a master craftsman who chose a solitary life to complete his magnum opus. The devil's portrait, she contends, was not a signature but a standard feature in medieval religious art, a warning to the faithful. She has spent years in the archives, patiently and methodically building her case. For her, the Codex is a puzzle to be solved with logic and evidence, not a source of supernatural dread. She is a woman of science and reason, determined to strip away the layers of legend and reveal the simple human truth beneath. However, her latest research trip to Stockholm has begun to unsettle her carefully constructed theories. She is there to supervise a new, highly detailed digital scan of the manuscript, a project that allows for unprecedented analysis of the vellum and ink. As the project gets underway, strange things begin to happen. Sensitive electronic equipment in the climate-controlled vault flickers and dies without explanation. Technicians complain of a sudden biting cold in the room, even though the thermostats show a constant temperature. Late one night, working alone, Anya hears what sounds like faint scratching coming from the sealed display case that holds the book. She dismisses it as fatigue, her mind playing tricks on her. The incidents become harder to ignore. A security guard, a stoic and sensible man, quits his job abruptly, refusing to say why but muttering about the eyes on page 290. During a scan of the pages near the devil's portrait, the high-resolution imaging system crashes, and the only saved file is a corrupted image that looks, to a disturbed Anya, like a distorted, screaming face. She tries to rationalize it all: power surges, technical glitches, the power of suggestion working on the staff. But a seed of doubt, cold and unwelcome, begins to sprout in her mind. Her academic certainty is beginning to crack under the weight of experiences that defy logical explanation. The book she has studied for so long is starting to feel less like an artifact and more like a presence. Dr. Sharma finds herself caught between two worlds. By day, she's the respected academic, delivering lectures to her colleagues about ink composition and scribal habits. She speaks with authority about the historical context of the Podlazic monastery and the political motivations of Emperor Rudolf II. She presents her work with the cool, detached confidence of a scientist. Her life's work is built on a foundation of facts and peer-reviewed research. To her peers, she is the leading expert on the Codex, the one who is finally separating the book from its ridiculous, superstitious baggage. She clings to this role, to the comfort of logic and reason, as if it were a shield. But by night, alone in her quiet hotel room, the shield begins to fail. The strange events at the library haunt her. The scratching sound, the technician's corrupted file, the guard's sudden departure, they circle in her mind, refusing to be dismissed. She finds herself staring for hours at digital copies of the manuscript's pages, not as a historian, but as someone searching for something she cannot name. She becomes fixated on the devil's portrait. The more she looks at it, the more unsettling it becomes. She starts to notice tiny, almost invisible inconsistencies in the ink, details the new scans have revealed. It begins to feel less like an illustration and more like a window into somewhere else. The mystery of the missing 12 pages becomes a personal obsession for Anya. She scours historical records, letters, and shipping manifests, looking for any clue about when they might have disappeared. Was it during the fire in 1697? Or were they removed by Rudolf II, who might have found something within them that he wanted to keep secret? The thought that those pages might still exist somewhere, hidden away in a forgotten archive or a private collection, consumes her. She begins to dream about them. In her dreams, she sees the pages, filled with strange diagrams and text written in a language she doesn't recognize. She wakes up with her heart pounding, the dream feeling more like a memory. Anya is now walking a dangerous line. She is a scholar trained to believe only in what can be proven, yet she is confronted by a series of events that defy proof. Is the Codex Gigas truly just a book, a product of its time, its dark reputation a mere collection of folktales? Or is it something more? Has some ancient power, dormant for centuries, been awakened by the new technology used to study it? The question terrifies her because it challenges the very core of her identity as a rational thinker. The book is no longer just her subject of study. It has become an active force in her life, pulling her deeper into a mystery that feels both ancient and frighteningly immediate. The story of the Codex Gigas leaves us standing on the edge of a precipice, staring into the abyss of the unknown. We are left with questions that echo through the centuries, as potent today as they were in the shadowy halls of the Podlazic monastery. Was the legend of Brother Herman a simple folk tale, created to explain a monumental feat of human endurance? Or was it the literal truth of a desperate man's pact with the ultimate evil? The book itself offers no easy answers. It remains silent, its massive pages holding their secrets close. It is both a holy Bible and, in the minds of many, a demonic artifact. The unsettling power of the devil's portrait remains one of its most potent mysteries. Why does this particular image, among countless other medieval depictions of Satan, continue to disturb people so profoundly? Is it the artistry, the stark composition, or something else entirely? Scholars like Dr. Sharma might point to the psychological impact of such a large, confrontational image of evil placed at the heart of a sacred text. And yet, for those who have stood before it, there is often a feeling of something more, a sense of being watched, a feeling of a malevolent intelligence staring back from across the centuries. It is a gaze that seems to challenge the viewer's own faith and fortitude. The fate of the 12 missing pages continues to tantalize historians and conspiracy theorists alike. If they were simply lost to fire or carelessness, then a piece of history is gone forever. But if they were deliberately removed, the question is why? And by whom? What knowledge could have been so dangerous, so valuable, or so terrifying that it had to be excised from the world's largest medieval manuscript? The empty space in the book's binding is a mystery in itself, a void that invites us to fill it with our darkest fears and wildest speculations. The missing pages ensure that the story of the Codex Gigas will never truly be complete. Ultimately, the Codex Gigas forces us to confront the boundaries of our own belief. It is a physical object, a product of history that can be touched, measured, and analyzed. Yet it is also a legend, a story that taps into our deepest fears about sin, damnation, and the forces that lie just beyond our understanding. Perhaps the true power of the Devil's Bible is not supernatural, but its ability to hold these two realities in perfect, unsettling balance. It is a riddle written in ink and vellum, a question posed by the medieval world that the modern world has yet to answer. And as long as it exists, it will continue to ask, do you believe in legends? Or is there something more sinister waiting to be discovered?